Having the right TMS is vital in supporting freight broker growth. Partner with TIE software to optimize your processes and compete with confidence. Get into the automation, data insights, and cash flow optimization game. Request a demo at tiesoftware.com. Welcome back to another edition of Tech Call. Today we are talking about all things bulk shipping. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on FreightWaves.com if you haven't already. Today we are joined by Nick Shipe, Director of Premium Transportation at Circle Logistics. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Thanks, Mary. Appreciate being back again.
I am very excited for today because, one, I know virtually nothing about bulk shipping other than there's a lot of it. And two, I am excited to finally have you on Check Call. I feel like we've danced around other shows and other, summits, but today we finally have you on Check Call. So before we get too far into the intricacies of bulk shipping, why don't you give us some background on you and how you got started at Circle?
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, thank you very much for having us back on here. Anytime that we can not only get our name out there, but join the calls and talk a little bit about what we do, I think that's a huge plus here. So again, I'm Nick. I'm Director of Premium Transportation. I've been with Circle for 5.5 years now, and I've had a few different roles here at the company, but I've been in my last role per se and new title here for about the last 3 months in the title, but responsibility and role for about the last 3.5 years. So started with Circle, came out of the insurance business after about 9.5 years, and started and led part of our sales team that was here. Started that during 2019 when we were kind of in a very similar freight type of atmosphere as what we were in 2023 and hopefully coming out of in 2024. And so I led and did that on our brokerage side for about 9-10 months there. And then an opportunity came along where I was able to take part of our account management side, run a few of what we distinguish as pods within our segment here. Excuse me. And managed, managed about 25 accounts and 5 directs, employees there to some of our larger shippers that we had there. And then opportunity came where I was able to take our expedite team over and manage that to where it's our higher volume, our premium transportation. And then COVID hit. And that kind of shook some things up, but actually introduced us into the bulk realm of things. And so that kind of got our introduction into the bulk game, and that, just kind of blossomed itself into what we've been doing since COVID hit. And, we've branched out into different sections within bulk and continue on to this day into 2024 and further.
So basically what you're telling us is that you're the man who can do it all. Like, the memes of get you a man that can do both. Nick's the man that can do it all.
We try. We absolutely try.
I absolutely love that. Okay, so for today we're breaking down bulk 101, bulk for beginners, if you will. So basically, first of all, what is bulk shipping and what is usually shipped via bulk shipping?
Yeah, so when I look at bulk, I've always broke it down into really 3 different categories. You're going to have your lubricants, fuel, chemicals into one section. And then you're going to have your food grade into another section. And then you're going to have your dry bulk into another section. Now, each of those can then break down just as dry van or flatbed or anything else, right? It gets specialized and goes further and further and further and further down. But usually you can break it down into the liquid chemical side, and then you could break it down into the dry bulk side of things. And so the products that go into that, it is vast, but you have to think about it. It's the start of almost everything that you're going to ship. It's the raw materials that are coming in for your perfumes, for your dog food, for your, oil that you're putting into your cars, the fuel that you're putting into your cars, a multitude of different things.
So basically, When you said like the dry and the liquid together, for some reason my brain wanted to put both of them together in one container. I know that's not how it's done, but I kind of have like a oatmeal picture going on. But I also like that it's, you have your liquids and everything like that, which is something that I've heard of before because, one of the places I worked at that did bulk shipping, they did bulk liquid chemicals and, it was real fun and all those hazmat permits and all that. So not the ones that you want to see have an accident on the highway, basically. But then also, the grains are kind of those are the ones that end up getting to like cows and animals and things to eat. So that then we end up, eating later on. And you're right, it is like the beginning of everything. It's like the raw materials that we then shape and form into everything that we use every day. And I kind of like that. And I always forget that those have to get somewhere too. Like just like everything else. It's gotta move.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a, no discredit to the dry van. I've done a lot of business within the dry van and the flatbeds and the expedites and straight trucks and springers and everything that comes into it. But it was always if it fits, it ships. And let's just get it rolling. But when it comes to the bulk side of things, there's a lot more of an education that has to be had. Whether it be obviously the specific types of tanks, and again, that gets branched out between, the liquid, the chemical, and the dry side. The fittings, the receiver requirements, as crazy as it is, if there's drops that even go along with that, and the temperature of what that product can be during the time of the shipment. And, you could do reefer type of shipments in obviously, refrigerated vans, but with that being said, the temperature of a product can't go below it and you have to steam it. So, there is quite a bit that comes into it. And, you talked and mentioned, obviously the hazmat, you think about, oh gosh, a fuel spill or an oil spill or anything like that. And, still to this day, I remember sitting at a conference for bulk. And one of the craziest stories that one of the safety people came out and was like, yeah, we could talk about all those safety things, but what happens when you spill a gallon or a bulk tank load of milk? And you're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, right? Well, what if that milk goes into the stream that has the fish that's underneath there? And now that fish is spoiled over there. And you're like, those types of things are very serious. And now you're calling, the EPA and all those things. So it's like, wow, there really is a lot that has to go into it. And, your safety is a huge part of that. To make sure that you're doing it. And furthermore, we operate as a broker within that. So we have to take it a step above and make sure that our carriers are dealing with that as well.
That is something that I didn't even think about. Because like you see like a dry van like has turned over or whatever. And, you'll see maybe beer cans or boxes of cereal or other stuff like that. But an entire tanker of milk, like, yeah, it's not really going to hurt anyone, but it actually is going to do some damage. And that's something I didn't even think about. How common are giant tankers of milk like that?
Daily, right? So
I think I just always think of like the milk in like the gallons you buy at the grocery store. I don't ever think of just like basically like what gasoline comes in, but of milk.
Taking it from the farm typically to the distribution centers that are then, obviously redistributed into those gallons. So just like, the chemicals for the perfume or cologne that people wear. It all is the raw material that then has to be taken in and then packaged.
That is, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of mind blowing to think about that because I just always assumed that those like circular kind of tanker trucks, I just always assumed they had like gasoline in them, not necessarily like other things.
Yep.
Huh. Okay. Well, I guess when do you know that you need to, like, I guess, is there ever a chance where like you're going to have a bulk shipment versus just like stuff on pallets? Like, I know that it's kind of common with like agricultural seed, but is you ever have like this could go bulk or this could be on a pallet, or is it usually very clearly like divisively one or the other?
Yeah. For the most part, it's pretty decisive. The customers do that. Now, we have had some customers, and a lot of times it does come up to the availability of the truck. I've talked in previous conversations, right, about the funnel. And dry vans are always at the top, and then just kind of segments down there. Within lubricants per se, those lubricants can go in totes, and sometimes an automotive facility may need 5,000 gallons of to keep their production rolling for that vehicle, but there may not be that tank truck that can make it in time, so they may expedite a tote that's got 500 gallons of oil that will at least keep that line rolling for 4 hours, 5 hours while they're trying to secure a tank truck that goes through. So there are a little bit of times where, hey, the decision of X or Y, do we make the choice between that truck? But no, it's for the most part, I mean, it's very common. Hey, we're going to go. This is a bulk shipment, or this is a dry van shipment, or flatbed shipment.
Okay, I kind of like that. It's like that. We'll get you over the hump, but for the most part, traditionally, it's going to stay in the bulk land of things. Which I don't even know how. Okay, so like, how do you even begin to find a bulk carrier? Like, do you just post that on a load board like you would anything else, or do you just like call Johnny who knows a guy that has bulk, or do you just do both?
Yeah, so I've been very fortunate. I've got a very good group of people that just solely sourced the carriers there. There are a few boards that are out there that you could post up to, but not to change subjects, but obviously there is the fraud that goes along with it on the boards and things like that, and it's not as what's the right way to say it? Not as fruitful as DAT, let's say. DAT is a great resource when it comes to dry vans and flatbeds and reefers. There is no DAT, and I'm going to trademark this because maybe that's my next way to make $1 million is have a DAT for bulk shipments. But there really isn't that type of DAT load board for those types of shipments. So you really do have to work within that network. And so, the group that I have has done a tremendous job at really networking with those carriers, building those relationships. And it's a very small, tight-knit network because, again, there is a lot of cost that comes into play when you're talking about the trailer cost for those types of shipments. So, they're not always as trusting to the broker because they just don't know who's operating within that customer there. So word of mouth is a huge thing, and taking care of our carriers of what we've been able to network within has allowed us to, Billy Bob is with this company, the met him at the next shipper, it goes on to the next one, and then so word of mouth has helped us, but a lot of it is reaching out, finding the local areas, developing the relationships, and going forward.
That is something that, first of all, bulk shipping load board, sign us all up. I know that what EXO, we've had them on, they do the same thing for flatbed, but when I did flatbed shipments, I didn't know anything about it, and I needed specifically the low boys with, so it's a kind of a smaller group within that, and so I literally would call someone and be like, hey, I know this isn't your route, but do you know someone? And do you know someone who knows someone who knows someone? And then eventually you end up talking to these, you have like a guy for each region, and you're like, hey, who do you know? Because look, if there's anything I've learned is that those drivers talk and they love a good gossip sesh. So they're going to know who does what in each area.
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely ran into that, right? And there's been some crazy conversations that go along with that.
I think that any conversation with the driver starts at like a baseline level of entertaining, and then it just kind of goes from there. Especially once you get to know them a little bit, then you get the real fun. But moving away from sourcing those carriers, so you have a shipper who is a bulk shipper, you have a carrier who loves hauling bulk freight. How do you even begin to price that? Because for like dry van, you kind of have there's a whole bunch of tools out there to help you price it. And, typically when you're so specialized in an area, you kind of have a feel for it. But like, do you just kind of like throw a number in the air and say, yeah, sure, $6,000 sounds great for this load? Or like, how do you even begin? Because it's not necessarily like the commodities are the same. So like, where do you start?
Yeah. So there obviously there's a total shift in the entire market, right? And that shift happened um, all the way from Sprinter van to bulk trucks. So traditionally, when we got into it, and the amount of volume that we were seeing during that time, uh, we just priced it round trip rates, and with that, uh, it, we had so much volume that we would just send that truck back empty. And what you have to think about when it comes to bulk, one of the cost saving measures that allowed us to do that was, okay, if we're charging $6 a mile, that may seem really high, but it's truthfully only maybe 289 to $3 a mile because that guy's coming back empty, but he doesn't have to get the tank washed. And so then now we have less time in that tank to be able to say, okay, we're not waiting 8 hours, 9 hours at the tank wash to then be able to reload out of that same facility going to another delivery that would be there. One of the things as we started to build our, network around it is okay, how do we work within the customers, section? So can we start to think about round trips? And everybody wants to get back down to Texas because Texas is the hot spot, especially when it comes to the lubricant and chemical side. Okay, can we take a shipment that's out of Texas, bring them up to the Midwest, maybe have them deadhead 200-300 miles because that's not a lot in the bulk world, but does that bring them back down to Oklahoma? And then if we're doing that, now we're closer back to Texas, they're deadheading back there. And so then we were able to present cost savings to our customers and saying, hey, we're still treating this like round trips for ourselves, but we're using your freight to get that truck back to here, which we're then presenting, a better cost to, them. And so now we're maybe charging them $350 a mile instead of $6 a mile. So, obviously there is that. But then, it does change between the commodities there, whether it's a hazmat shipment or it's a not hazmat shipment. If it's a, specific type of steam that needs into it or specific type of wash that's not necessarily reimbursed correctly. The product has a lot to do with how that is dictated on there. And we've had some crazy products that we've had to transfer that, is insurance is not cheap. Let's just put it that way. And so, that gets directly correlated back to the cost of that shipment there. And so, that can unfortunately raise the quote unquote rate per mile, just to encompass all to that. As I've talked and continue to, the funnel is pretty low. So relocation of those trailers, we did a project in December for a customer of ours, and, we were relocating trucks out of Texas to California to take a shipment to Illinois. Just in that, you're talking almost 3,000 miles on a shipment there. And it's like, that raises the rate. So, our carriers do a really good job of being honest on the rates that we need. We take those rates to the customers. Our customers, we've had a really good relationship that we've, kind of moved within the network there. Through obviously when it was a broker's mindset, and the customers needed us, we stayed fair to them. The customers have stayed fair to us, and obviously they utilized, what the market has turned to them now, but they didn't completely just drop the rates as low as possible because they know that these trailers can be reconsigned to the products that maybe may be paying more at that specific time. So, it's had its ups and downs when it comes to the rates, but I would say it's a lot less drastic than what I've seen the rates on the dry van and the flatbed and open deck style rates that I've seen within the last year and a half.
I think that the more specialized you get, the more especially on the shipper side, they know that they have a very specialized thing that they have to do. And they're pretty understanding when you come at them with what may seem like an exorbitant rate in the dry van world. They're pretty understanding. They're like, oh yeah, no, we know it's kind of expensive to ship our stuff. So whatever you got is great. But I felt that in my soul when you said that you've taken trucks from Texas to California to move it to Illinois. I've taken stuff from the middle of the West Coast to go to Iowa, to go down to Mississippi. sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, and you got to find the freight when you can find. You got to find the equipment when you can find it.
Yep, absolutely. And I've always prided myself when talking to the customers is, hey, this is where the rate is coming from. Just simply, putting it. It's not just us marking it up, 45% because we know you're absolutely in desperate need. It's, hey, because your product is $150,000 in value or $200,000 in value, our insurance costs increase that way. Hey, we had the deadheaded truck for an extra 900 miles to make these shipments happen. And I think that goes a huge, huge way with our customers to not only just lock us in, but gives them justification of why this rate is this amount.
And I think that transparency is something that you learn so well in that specialized freight world, that you kind of have to do it because you have to say, hey, this is where it's coming from. Like, this isn't me just trying to take advantage of a situation. Because I know that transparency doesn't always exist in the dry van world. So when you have someone that comes over from the dry van to, kind of start learning some of the more specialized freight, you kind of have to say, like, no, we don't hide things here. Like, we are very open and transparent. And, it's much more of a work together process versus just like, I'm going to take care of this and I'm going to get this moved for you. So, Nick, we are running out of time today, but there's a question, and we asked you some other questions, but this is specific to check call, and everyone that comes to the show has to answer it. Are you ready for it?
Absolutely.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Okay, so I have done a lot of research on this, and I've thought about this a lot, but I have a question back to you first. Are we talking about the actual hot dog, or are we talking about the hot dog that you eat?
So you're talking about basically with a bun or without a bun?
Correct.
Well, this is the argument, Is it all a sandwich? To me, a hot dog itself is the dog, like the ye old dog sans bun. But if you're talking about in the argument of is a hot dog a sandwich, that implies that it is in a bun. So, and to me, it's not a sandwich.
All right. So I'm going to disagree with you. If we're talking about if it's in a bun, then cooking-wise, culinary-wise, it's within a yeast roll. Even if it is split, it's a sandwich.
Okay. All right. I see your point. I disagree because when you go into like a nice deli, they're not going to have a hot dog sandwich. And when you go to the ballpark, you don't walk up to the hot dog man and go, hey, can I get one of them sandwiches? But that's okay, to each his own. But I see your point from the culinary perspective, and I love that. So if anyone has any questions on, your take on hot dogs and sandwiches or anything about bulk shipping or any kind of that specialized shipping, where can they find you outside the show?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is a great, obviously, resource. You're able to look me up on there. Our website has some of the details of what we have. Email address, bulk@Circle Delivers, gets my whole entire team that's involved. They are available 24/7. They are a great group of individuals that, specialize in different areas. So even if you are looking at, dry or liquid or chemical, it goes to the entire group. And then, my individual email, nshipe@circledelivers.com. We're certainly available 24/7.
Awesome. And I am going to request that if anyone has any cool bulk storage deliveries or any cool bulk stories, you gotta let Nick and I know, because I just love hearing the cool ones. So you gotta let us know because they're the best. But other than that, thank you so much for joining us today, Nick.
No problem, Mary. Thanks for having us on again.
You can check out the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't forget to check out all the other incredible FreightWaves podcasts. And see you on the internet.